They dream big, plan meticulously, and envision success, yet rarely take action. This puzzling gap between ambition and execution isn't laziness. It's a complex psychological pattern. Understanding it is the first step toward breaking it. People who describe themselves as ambitious but lazy often find themselves caught in a psychological trap known as cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that arises when one's beliefs and behaviors are misaligned. In this context, the belief is a strong desire to succeed, to achieve something significant, or to be extraordinary, while the behavior is marked by avoidance, procrastination, or chronic inaction. This creates an inner conflict that's not just frustrating, but mentally draining. The more one aspires to achieve, the louder the inner voice becomes when no progress is made. It's like carrying the weight of unrealized potential every single day. Leon Festinger, the psychologist who first developed the theory of cognitive dissonance in 1957, suggested that humans have an inherent desire for consistency between their attitudes and behaviors. When inconsistency arises, such as dreaming of success but not working toward it, mental stress follows. To reduce this discomfort, the mind will try to rationalize the inaction. This might take the form of excuses. I work better under pressure, or I'll start when I'm really ready. Over time, however, these justifications lose their power and the dissonance deepens, giving rise to feelings of guilt, shame, and self-doubt. This psychological tension can further lead to procrastination as a coping mechanism, not laziness in the traditional sense. Research from behavioral psychology suggests that procrastination is often a response to emotional regulation problems, not a simple unwillingness to work. Ambitious individuals may feel so overwhelmed by the size of their goals or the fear of not meeting their own expectations that they choose short-term comfort over long-term gain. Ironically, their ambition amplifies the pressure, making the act of starting even more daunting. As this cycle continues, it begins to affect self-perception. One might start seeing themselves as inherently unproductive or undisciplined, even if they are deeply driven. This self-identity creates a loop. Ambition leads to pressure, which leads to inaction, which feeds into a negative self-image, which in turn makes action even harder. The loop is self-reinforcing and very difficult to break without intentional cognitive or behavioral interventions. Further compounding the issue is society's glorification of hustle culture. People who are ambitious but do not match that ambition with constant visible effort may feel alienated or inadequate. Social comparison, especially via social media, can exacerbate cognitive dissonance, making individuals believe that they are falling behind. They are not just battling their internal gap between ambition and action, but also the external pressure of others seemingly doing more, achieving more, and moving faster. Without addressing the root of this mental conflict, the individual risks burnout, not from doing too much, but from thinking too much and doing too little. The mental load of unfulfilled goals can be just as exhausting as actual labor. In the long run, this unbalanced equation of high ambition and low execution can lead to anxiety, chronic dissatisfaction, and even depressive symptoms. Laziness is often misunderstood, especially in ambitious individuals who deeply desire success but struggle to take consistent action. Neuroscience offers a more nuanced explanation. The disconnect between motivation, wanting, and execution, doing, can be traced to how different regions of the brain operate. Ambition is largely driven by the dopaminergic system, a network involving the ventral tegmental area, VTA, nucleus accumbens, and prefrontal cortex. Dopamine, the motivation molecule, plays a critical role in reward anticipation. It spikes when a person thinks about achieving a goal, winning a competition, or building a legacy. But this surge of desire does not always translate into sustained effort or action. That translation, the bridge between intent and behavior, largely depends on executive functions governed by the prefrontal cortex, particularly in the dorsolateral and anterior cingulate regions. These brain areas are responsible for planning, task initiation, focus, and decision-making. When executive function is compromised or underdeveloped, a person may vividly imagine success, crave recognition, or dream of financial freedom, yet find themselves paralyzed when it comes to taking the necessary steps. This creates a paradox where the mind races with ambition, but the body stays idle. In conditions like ADHD or chronic stress, executive dysfunction is particularly prevalent. A 2020 study in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry highlighted how individuals with ADHD show normal or even heightened ambition, but struggle significantly with task execution due to deficits in self-regulation and impulse control. It's not that they don't care about outcomes. It's that their neural wire makes it difficult to sustain directed effort, especially for tasks that don't offer immediate rewards. As a result, they often internalize failure as a moral or character flaw, labeling themselves as lazy despite genuine effort and good intentions. This mismatch between brain systems also explains why ambitious but inactive people often engage in excessive planning or daydreaming. The brain receives dopamine from imagining success, which feels productive in the moment. Vision boards, detailed goal journals, or watching motivational content can trick the brain into thinking it's already achieving. But because the execution system isn't activated, the person remains in a loop of mental rehearsal without real-world progress. Modern environments further complicate this dynamic. Digital distractions like social media and entertainment platforms provide instant dopamine hits, undermining the brain's long-term reward pathways. A person might intend to start a project, but their brain is hijacked by shorter, easier gratification loops. Over time, this reshapes neural patterns, reducing the brain's tolerance for delayed gratification, a key ingredient for achieving ambitious goals. This divergence between the brain's motivational and executive systems isn't a permanent flaw. It's a biological challenge that can be managed. Tools like behavioral activation, cognitive training, and environmental design help rewire patterns. For example, breaking large goals into micro-tasks, minimizing decision fatigue, or using external accountability can help bypass executive bottlenecks. Understanding that what appears as laziness might actually be a neural imbalance provides not just empathy, but also clearer solutions. Not all laziness is equal. In fact, some forms of so-called laziness may actually be rooted in efficiency and optimization rather than avoidance. This is often referred to as strategic laziness, the tendency to conserve energy and effort for tasks that yield the highest possible return. Ambitious individuals who seem lazy may not lack drive, but may instead possess a refined instinct for prioritizing output over effort. They are selective in how they apply their energy, and this can often lead to more creative or efficient solutions than traditional hard work alone. People with this trait often look for shortcuts, hacks, or systems that minimize repetitive effort. For example, rather than spending hours each day manually completing a task, they might invest time up front in building an automated system or finding the right tool to streamline it. This behavior mirrors the economic principle of opportunity cost, the understanding that every unit of time or effort spent on one task is time not spent on another, potentially more impactful one. In this context, what appears to others as laziness may actually be a conscious or subconscious attempt to maximize return on investment in terms of time and cognitive load. Famous examples underscore this idea. Bill Gates is known for saying he would choose a lazy person to do a hard job because they'll find an easy way to do it. The reasoning behind this statement lies in problem-solving style rather than work ethic. A so-called lazy but ambitious person may reject traditional labor-intensive methods not because they are unwilling to work, but because they are wired to seek leverage, automation, and delegation. Moreover, the rise of the digital age has amplified the relevance of strategic laziness. Many modern high achievers, especially in tech and entrepreneurship, embody the work smart, not hard mantra. They often build systems at scale, outsource tedious tasks, or develop passive income streams, all hallmarks of this type of laziness. For them, success is not measured by how much effort is expended, but by how much impact is generated with minimal friction. Cognitive science also supports this mindset. The brain is naturally inclined to conserve energy, a concept known as cognitive economy. According to evolutionary psychology, human beings are hardwired to seek the most efficient way to achieve a goal, as this would historically conserve resources necessary for survival. Ambitious people who adopt lazy behaviors may simply be operating in alignment with these instincts. But in a modern context where mental energy, not physical labor, is the primary currency, importantly, strategic laziness should not be mistaken for apathy or complacency. The difference lies in intent and results. Strategic laziness leads to tangible outcomes through smart design and thoughtful choices, whereas passive laziness results in stagnation. The former is a force multiplier when paired with ambition. It filters effort through a lens of optimization, often producing results that outpace brute force hustle. It's not a lack of work ethic. It's a different kind of work ethic, one rooted in working less, but achieving more. Ambitious individuals who exhibit lazy behavior often deal with powerful internal saboteurs, like fear of failure and perfectionism, which quietly undermine their ability to act. While outwardly it may appear that they are unwilling to work, the reality is often more complex and emotionally driven. Ambition, by its nature, sets high standards, whether in career, relationships, or personal development. But when those standards become too rigid or idealized, they can generate overwhelming psychological pressure. The greater the desire for success, the more terrifying the prospect of falling short becomes. Perfectionism is a particularly insidious trait in this dynamic. Research by psychologists Paul Hewitt and Gordon Flett outlines how maladaptive perfectionism creates a paralyzing fear of imperfection. Instead of motivating action, it causes delay. The person becomes so fixated on doing everything flawlessly that they avoid starting altogether. Even small mistakes feel catastrophic, making it emotionally safer to remain in a state of inaction. For ambitious individuals, this form of perfectionism doesn't lessen the desire to succeed. It magnifies it while simultaneously placing success just out of reach, unless all conditions are perfect. This fear-based avoidance often presents itself as procrastination, but it's more than just a time management problem. It is a form of emotional self-protection. According to Dr. Tim Pychyl, a leading researcher on procrastination, people often delay tasks not because they are lazy, but because they are trying to avoid negative emotions, stress, anxiety, doubt, or even potential judgment. For someone with big dreams, the emotional stakes are higher. Every task becomes a test of worthiness. This turns even simple projects into emotionally loaded events, further increasing the likelihood of avoidance. Social comparison intensifies the problem. In the age of constant digital exposure, ambitious individuals are bombarded with curated images of success from peers and influencers. This leads to heightened expectations and a distorted sense of how quickly others achieve greatness. When their own progress doesn't match what they perceive online, they feel defeated before they even begin. The perceived gap between their potential and their current reality fosters shame, a potent demotivator. Internal narratives also play a crucial role. Many people who see themselves as ambitious but lazy often carry deep-seated beliefs about self-worth. They may fear that trying and failing will confirm their worst fear, that they're not good enough. As a result, they avoid taking action as a defense mechanism. It is easier to be seen as someone who could succeed if they tried than to try and prove otherwise. This leads to chronic underachievement despite strong ambition. Ultimately, this pattern becomes self-reinforcing. Inaction leads to missed opportunities, which leads to guilt and disappointment, reinforcing the belief that one is incapable. Over time, ambition turns into a source of pain rather than motivation. The mind builds a wall between desire and action, not because it doesn't care, but because it cares too much. The emotional risk becomes greater than the potential reward, locking the person in a cycle where perfectionism and fear of failure continuously throttle forward motion. Behavioral science suggests that ambitious individuals who struggle with laziness can benefit significantly from tiny habit formation and identity-based behavior change. Instead of focusing on massive, high-pressure goals, the focus shifts to microactions that gradually reinforce a new self-image. According to B.J. Fogg, founder of the Behavior Design Lab at Stanford, the most effective way to build long-term habits is to start so small that it feels almost effortless. This is crucial for those trapped in the ambition-laziness paradox, where overwhelming goals create inertia instead of motivation. For instance, rather than setting a goal to write a book, an individual might commit to writing just one sentence a day. This takes almost no mental energy, reduces emotional resistance, and helps the person create a routine without activating their inner critic or perfectionist tendencies. Over time, these small actions begin to stack, creating momentum. Momentum, in this context, is more powerful than motivation because it doesn't rely on fluctuating emotions or willpower. It relies on consistency. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, emphasizes the importance of identity-based habits. The idea is to stop asking what I want to achieve and instead ask, who do I want to become? For the ambitious but inactive person, the key transformation is from someone who only dreams to someone who follows through. Each small habit reinforces this new identity. Writing a single sentence daily says, I am a writer. Doing one push-up says, I am someone who takes care of my body. It's not the size of the action, but the repetition and consistency that rewires the brain and redefines self-perception. Neuroscientific research supports this process. Habits are formed in the basal ganglia, a region of the brain associated with pattern recognition and automatic behavior. The more frequently a behavior is repeated in the same context, the more automatic it becomes. This means that even low-effort actions, when repeated daily, can build neural pathways that make action default rather than exception. For someone struggling with laziness, this lowers the activation energy required to begin. One of the most effective strategies is using habit stacking, attaching a new, small habit to an existing one. For example, after brushing teeth, one might immediately open their laptop to write one sentence. The existing habit acts as a trigger, making the new behavior easier to remember and perform. Over time, these chains grow and build structure into otherwise unstructured days. Environmental design is also a critical component. People are more likely to follow through when their surroundings support their goals. A clean workspace, visible to-do list, or minimize distractions can remove decision fatigue and make execution seamless. When effort is reduced, follow-through increases, not because the person is more disciplined, but because the environment aligns with their intent. The cumulative effect of these practices is not just increased productivity, but a shift in self-identity. The ambitious but inactive individual begins to see themselves as someone who takes action, even if it's small. These small wins compound, closing the gap between who they are and who they want to be. Ambition without action can feel like a slow-burning frustration, but isn't a fixed flaw. It's a signal. Whether the root lies in perfectionism, executive dysfunction, fear of failure, or misplaced energy, there are clear, science-backed ways to reconnect vision with movement. By shifting focus from pressure to process, embracing micro-habits, and designing supportive environments, the ambitious yet inactive individual can transform passive potential into powerful progress. The key isn't to force hustle, but to build momentum one intentional step at a time.